Hey, future Black and Latinx leaders. You are listening to the Keys to the Office podcast, where we interview amazing professionals who share their individual career paths to set you up for success. We're giving you the keys to the office, and all you need to do is show up ready to unlock the door. Let's jump into today's episode.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Keys family. I'm excited. I've been excited a lot, but I'm absolutely excited about today's guest. She's a victims' rights attorney, but she's so much more than that and has such an impactful and critical story to tell as someone who is in this legal space. So join me in welcoming Miss Rachel to the podcast.
Hi, thank you, Christina. It's so great to be here.
Hey, Fancy, I'm excited. Y'all, we've already chatted and y'all are in for just an awesome call. There are no limits. We are going to discuss everything. We are going to get into the nitty-gritty because there's so much for you all to learn. So I hope you have your notepads and your pens ready. So first, tell us who you are. I said victim rights attorney, but I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do.
Yes, I am primarily a victim rights attorney. This is a new venture for me. In April, I did resign from being a prosecutor after 4 years and moved into the victim rights attorney space because I've seen how there's a need for it. There's not a lot of those attorneys. I also create music. I'm a lyricist. I'm an author, a poet, a ritualistic gardener. I've taught women different gardening courses. And so one of the things that was kind of a blessing in disguise of leaving my previous career and becoming this entrepreneur in the past 4 months is I've completely expanded into fully expressing myself in all these different areas and getting a clearer, zoomed out picture of all that I can be and just being it. So
yeah, with
no limit. No limits, right? I have a friend who coined the term, her name's Nicola Vince, she coined the term multi-hyphenate talent. And I think all of us have that. We all have these different aspects of ourselves that want to be expressed. And it's just allowing us to say yes to that and making it happen.
Yeah. That's so awesome. So victim rights attorney, I guess let's back up for a second. Is this what you wanted to be when you grew up? Like little girl, elementary, junior high, high school, what did you see yourself doing?
So I absolutely knew that I wanted to be an attorney since I was 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I am from Jamaica. I was visiting home and my uncle Robert Fletcher, he's an attorney out there. He was a defense attorney at the time. And I really liked him. And when he explained what an attorney is, because I'm 7, I don't know. He explained it as I'm a voice for those who don't have one. And it was very impactful to me because the first thing I thought of was like Batman or some type of superhero.
I love it.
And so I said, I'm going to be just like him. Plus, he always got me ice cream whenever I wanted. So I'm like, okay.
That'll do it, right?
That'll do it. I'm 7. And so I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. And because of my international background, I thought that I would go into international law. And I even did some international type internships and externships while I was in law school and studied abroad a few times in undergrad and law school. But my final semester of law school, I ended up interning with Kim Gardner at the Circuit Attorney's Office in St. Louis, where I was attending law school at Washington University. And she was the first Black person and woman to be elected to their elected prosecutor in that city. And so I worked directly with her in her executive office and in addition in another division in the office. But working directly with her and getting the opportunity to do research for her and get close to her and be mentored by her and her tight crew really showed me what type of power a prosecutor has to bring about change when the discretion is used correctly, when the right people are in power and understand the actual community they're serving. Okay?
Critical.
And see it as a service rather than a militaristic operation. And she absolutely looks at her job as serving and recognizes the community. And so it's an uphill battle. It's been an uphill battle for her. And I've watched her, but it still ignited something in me. And walking into court as an intern, handling different hearings, I just felt this sense of pride that I was not only working for Kim Gardner, but I was able to go into these situations and do what I thought was fair. And so I got bit by the bug, is what they say. And I decided that I would at least start my career as a prosecutor. And so that's how I decided to be that type of lawyer, but always wanted to be an attorney for sure.
So how did you get that internship, right? There's someone out there who's like, yeah, I want to get into law. I don't even know where to start with finding an internship. How did you find that one?
Absolutely. So going to Washington University in St. Louis, they have really good relationships in that city for those opportunities. And so one of the things that if anyone wants to go into law, go to a law school that has a thriving legal community around it, because chances are they're going to have a relationship to all those law firms, the federal courts, the judges. There's going to be alum that are now judges and attorneys in the area that are more than happy to kind of reach back and bring the students along with them. And so Washington University is just world-renowned school. They just have these connections, and they had a regular clinic every year at the circuit attorney's office. And so I signed up for that, and I got in. It was about, I think it was 5 or 6 of us that actually were selected. And we got class credit, and we also just got to be in court and be lawyers for that semester. But it's really the relationships that your school has. So
yeah, I figured that. And it's important to raise your hand, right? And say, I'm interested in this, or I'm interested in that.
Yep.
What obstacles did you face along the way, specifically in your educational journey, right? And we'll get to the work stuff, which I know runs deep, but were there any hurdles? Was there anything, or rephrase, was there any moment where you said, you know what, this is not for me. This is too overwhelming. I don't have the support. What challenges existed during your educational journey, if any, right? It may have been smooth sailing. So we want to hear those stories too.
Definitely not smooth sailing before going to my secondary or whatever, college education. My biggest obstacle happened during the last 2 years, year and a half of high school. I had been a gifted and talented student since 2nd grade, meaning I'm doing 2 grade levels ahead of everyone else in a smaller cohort, but they keep us with kids our age because maturity levels. So gifted and talented program. I played soccer. I did drill team. I was classically trained in piano and music. I was one of the only students to study French and Spanish and become very fluent in those by the time I was a sophomore in high school. And I was living in a nice sort of affluent suburban area where I was safe and should have been protected. And at a certain point, I made friends with someone who'd come from sort of another side of town, and she was getting picked on. And the innate attorney in me, mediator in me, defended her. And got the mean girls to stop picking on her, and then we became friends. And but not long after that, maybe a year into that, she started kind of diverging into a path that I couldn't follow because I knew I'm doing high school athletics. I want to be a lawyer. I can't kind of be out with these people smoking and drinking, all the things that teenagers do. It's not wrong. It just didn't fit what I thought I was supposed to be doing. So I ended our friendship. And she didn't take too kindly to that. And she ended up sort of destroying the rest of my relationships in high school, bullying me. Nobody protected me. Not the principals of the school, not the administrators, not my parents. I guess they just didn't understand. I mean, I think institutions, we know they think the way to protect themselves is to do nothing and shush everything, which is terrible. And my parents just didn't understand, I guess, what was going on and how much I really just needed to go to a different school, even though I thought I had expressed that.
Right.
So I ended up stopped going. I ended up not going. I ended up not going. It's only been very recent that I've been able to use the phrase high school dropout to describe myself. Yeah. Because that has such a connotation. But the bottom line is, I relate to students and children who drop out because that's exactly what I did. And I'm not, and so I think it diminishes or devalues them by me not even being willing to acknowledge myself that way. And so I am a high school dropout. The next several years after that, I spiraled into exactly the path that I was trying to avoid going with her, the irony of it all. And ended up in very compromising and difficult situations, just anything bad a woman could go through. I went through abuse, sex assault, whatever, everything that can happen, homelessness, all these things. And all of a sudden, and so anyway, eventually I just looked myself in the mirror one day and I was like, I'm going to get you out of this and you're never going to feel this way again. And so I did some research. I found an alternative high school to graduate from. And I did that. And then right after that, the only school that I'd applied to, Bowling Green State University, somehow found my dad. The family had since split up. They didn't even live in the same place. I don't know how they found him. But they reached out and they said, we have a full ride for your daughter. Does she still want to come to our school? That's God. Like, wow. So of course I said, wow. Well, of course I said yes, because I had been heartbroken thinking I'm never going to be a lawyer after it all. Like, I'm a mess. And so I did it. And I arrived at Bowling Green State University with a pillow with no case, a pair of sheets, and a few items of clothing. I had been working as like a mortgage broker person briefly before that. So I had like suits, but you don't wear those at college. I didn't have I escaped the abusive relationship. I went to Bowling Green with barely anything and I never looked back. And once I was there, it was just like being home again, because I loved school so much growing up that I just immersed myself in that world and I never looked back. But that was the huge struggle. Yeah.
So you looked yourself in the mirror and said, like, we got this. We can fix this. You owned it.
I had to.
Yeah. I had to. Someone somewhere, and I think about people in my own life needs to hear that, right? Like, you'll know when you're ready to stop the spiral. And take control, because I was a victim, righteously so, and I was angry and I was hurt. And I kept living in this world of like, well, if there was any student or any child they would have protected, it should have been me. I was doing everything right. I was in a particularly abusive relationship when I had that conversation with myself in the mirror, and I'm looking at a bruised up face and I'm like, why are these people doing this to me? And I said, it doesn't matter why anymore. Yeah. It doesn't matter why anymore. It's just not going to happen anymore. It ends today.
And so I like that ritual of looking in the mirror. Even now, like, there have been times when I'll just pause and look in the mirror and I will just thank me.
Yeah.
I will thank past me. And then I'll look and I'll say, well, I want future me to thank me. So I'm going to make this type of choice today, or I'm going to do this type of thing, so that I can look back and always be thanking myself for finding myself and holding myself and being there for myself, but also being resourceful enough to find the resources, people, supports to get me through it. We don't do this on our own.
Nope.
But it's about looking up and looking around and gravitating towards the light, gravitating to the ones who can help us figure this out. Because there's always someone who can.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah, always. This is awesome. This is awesome, because I know for a fact there are so many people who need to hear this story. This is awesome. So we make it through law school, right? We're committed to education. We're committed to doing better, making an impact in our community. Then what happened, right? First roll out of law school was what?
So the first role was, like I said, being a prosecutor. I did work briefly for Kim Gardner as a full-on licensed attorney for a few months.
Okay.
But that was just while I was waiting for my bar license in Colorado to be approved, because Beth McCann, the first woman to be elected DA in Denver, in Colorado, had hired me straight out of law school, basically. I mean, they were just waiting for me to pass the bar and get those results. And then they had hired me. So that I would say was my official real job up until this past April.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I had come across a woman in this space that I believed what she said in her candidacy. I believed that she was in a city that would give her less resistance, because there were a lot of articles about how, Denver is generally progressive.
Right.
She doesn't have a lot of resistance in implementing the things she wants to implement. It's also a pretty rich city. Mm-hmm. And so they designate a lot of resources to law enforcement, which prosecutors are law enforcement. Mm-hmm. But then the DA has the choice, and she made this choice to delegate a lot of those funds to alternative sentencing schemes, to resources for homeless people, to just approaching criminal justice in a more humane way. At least I believed those were her true, values at the time. Unfortunately, in January, I was ordered to unlawfully prosecute someone. I was ordered to keep a case open after knowing that I couldn't prove the case. And we're not allowed to do that as prosecutors. And we also have to turn that information over to the defense attorneys. Under the US Constitution, under any state statute, under the Colorado Constitution, under our rules of ethics, that's what we're supposed to do in that situation. But this particular senior attorney decided to order me to go in the complete opposite direction. And so when I resisted and reported that order, shockingly, I got retaliated against for that. And it was very, very, it was like the Twilight Zone. To me, my role in my job seemed so clear in that moment. Mm-hmm. And the easy answer is like, yes, Rachel's right. Turn over the evidence, dismiss the case. I don't want to work. And then all I asked was not to have me work with this person anymore or near this person anymore. And instead they allowed for a bunch of retaliation, and then they ignored my request for an investigation when it just got too much a couple weeks into the retaliation. So it was particularly hurtful for me because only maybe 6 weeks earlier, Beth McCann herself, who had me sitting on different committees and going to fundraisers to represent the office, and I was teaching probation officers how to do revocation hearings, and I'm like, the attorney who's appointed to talk to the juveniles when they're about to fail out of their probation programs. Like, I'm the face of all these little things. So I'm clearly competent and I'm clearly valuable. She takes me to lunch, and I think she had found out that I had been looking for jobs because I was trying to get away from this other senior attorney who very much disagreed with his philosophies. And we see why. We see what happened. Yep. She asked me to not leave the office without talking to her first at that lunch. And so when barely 6 weeks later, I'm talking to you, this thing is going on, like, help me. And she completely, just goes in a complete opposite direction. It was just very jarring. And it was hurtful. It was hurtful. So that was my most recent experience. But for me, the substance of what I did, there was a no-brainer for me. Even if I knew that they were going to retaliate, even if I knew what I know today, it wouldn't change a thing. Okay. It wouldn't change a thing about upholding my oath of office, even though I end up having to lose the office itself. Mm-hmm. That's the oath I took as a prosecutor, was to uphold the constitutions and the statutes. And I did it. And I will say, just to add a bit of like a nice news that I got a couple weeks ago, is that the Colorado Department of Labor did agree with me in my unemployment adjudication that I had been ordered to do something illegal. Wow. And I am entitled to my unemployment benefits. So that's one agency. There's some other investigations going on, but getting that news has been extremely validating. It's another reason why I feel a bit more comfortable even talking more openly about it now with you. Mm-hmm. Because there's always that doubt. We always question ourselves, like, did this really just happen? Right. Am I exaggerating? Like, did I do the right thing? Does this matter in the bigger scheme of life? Like, did I just give up everything and no one's ever going to care or know? And it just hasn't borne out that way. It's absolutely been a part of my story in a way that makes sense. It's making me a stronger advocate for victims and understand them now that I'm technically a victim.
Right.
Understanding how intimidating that is. I don't know employment law. So when my employment lawyers are saying something to me and I say to them, like, I understand those words are in English, but like, I don't know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now seeing what it feels like for a victim to hear me explain a case or any attorney explain a case. And they know the words, so they might be afraid to ask because they don't want to look stupid or they don't want to annoy the attorney, and they put us on this pedestal. And I've always had an approach of like meet victims, meet witnesses where they're at, and be humane towards them. But I think that this experience is even going to take that on a higher level of really understanding how to let them feel comfortable asking questions, how to explain things in a way that is empowering and educational for them, and giving them the vocabulary to advocate for themselves, even if they're disagreeing with something I think we should do, giving them the power to say that. Right. So overall, it's just been such a growth experience for me. Mm-hmm. And even though it parallels a lot of what happened in high school, the difference now is that I already had that conversation with myself in the mirror back then. Mm-hmm. So I know that going through this, I have the fortitude, the resourcefulness, and the intelligence to get through it and figure this out. Yeah. I also know how to gather the resources, the spiritual advisors, the therapists, the whoever I need, very quickly, hold me in that moment and take that pause for myself and wrap my brain around what just happened, because trauma changes our chemistry in our brain. And the only way to change it back is to have the right people around us helping us not let it completely fracture our brain. And you would have to acknowledge that it's trauma. But I knew that from the last time. And so I brought those tools with me as well. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think it's heading in a direction where I'll be validated. The other thing that's beautiful, and I'll just pause here, is I'm not too attached with the outcome with the DA's office. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to share what's happened in forums like this so that other people can know, like, do not be afraid to stand in your values and your integrity ever.
That's it right there.
Here's what's on the other side of that. A clearer and more confident understanding of who you are. A knowledge and a fortitude that's going to carry me through turning this pain into my prosperity. And it gave me the opportunity to step back and be like, okay, well, who else am I? Because the lawyer identity right now is too painful to even, right? I was at that moment. So I know that I'm an artist. I'm classically trained in music. I've created music in the past. I'm a writer. And those things started coming to the foreground to get me through the situation. And now those things could actually end up being more sources of prosperity, more sources of income that are going to help to subsidize my ability to provide the services, accessible services to victims, now that I'm feeling strong enough to come back and hold space for being an attorney again.
Yeah. So I heard something in it, and I just want to be here for a minute to kind of dig deeper. There are bound to be obstacles, right? I think that's just the sheer nature of the industry, especially when you're talking about being a Black woman in the industry. You are going to encounter stuff. And it sounds like, based on previous life experiences, you had the tools. I'm hearing the tools involve focusing on your mental health. Finding outlets, finding your support system. I don't think we talk enough about mental health, right, in any industry. But I imagine specifically in the legal space, there are many people who look like us, who need that support, who need that system. How did you find the support you needed? Was it readily available? Did you find people that understood the trials and struggles you were going through with your former employer?
Yeah. So I took two different avenues. One was I looked specifically for a network of therapists of color. And I was connected to a young woman through that. And then through my music journey, through going and making music and having that outlet, I met a drummer who was a previous police officer. He's a retired police officer who connected me to some resources that are specific to law enforcement and the trauma that we go through and the responses that we have to these very toxic environments. And so I don't know how much I want to say about bottom line is they were helpful. Okay. And what I will also say is in that situation, I do want this to also, as a side thing, sort of, in the situation of dismissing the case, the police completely supported it. It was the detectives on the case. It was their higher ups. Like they supported my need to dismiss the case. Like we did not have the evidence anymore. And so I had that support as well. So when I'm going to people like the law enforcement, I was like the first prosecutor that they had in their kind of support groups. And they attached me to a couple therapists in that realm and different type of trauma touch massage. So within your profession, this is for you, for your audience, within your profession, there's always maybe like a employee assistance program, perhaps. My network was different. I ventured into the police thing, but typically if your company has a subscription or a partnership with that, those are going to end up being therapists that do understand your market, what you're working in. That's what I've seen. And it was actually the employee assistance program, when I specifically requested therapists of color, she said, "Oh, I got you. We have a whole list." And they do help match you up with what fits in that regard. And just about the situation, I think the part that intertwines with my race and gender is that in my 4 years working at the DA's office, I'd never seen a white man or woman be challenged on dismissing a case that the police agreed with dismissing, which, they don't want to dismiss cases ever. And so there's a bit of a history with the way I'd already been being treated. And I was trying to get away from that person for many, many months. And it culminated in this. And this was his most aggressive and over the line act to try and control me and violate my boundaries that I had been trying to set with him in my cases. And so it's intertwined in that regard as well. And so one of the most difficult things for me to do. Okay, I've only just now gotten able to talk about high school without crying. I don't want to not talk about this. I want to not cry.
I hear you. I'm here, and we'll pause if we need to. Like,
if we do, we do. I know. Yeah. That's one of the things. Feelings, we have to go through them. It's the only way through them. Okay. One of the most difficult things for me to do, because up until that point, I had not ever seen myself as less than for being a woman of color. It wasn't really a situation of those obstacles up until this point, because high school was, friends, whatever, normal high school things. My attorneys told me, they gave me a script. They told me how to request an investigation internally, because I have to do that first. And they gave me a whole paragraph to write. It's like, I am seeking an investigation because I believe that I am being retaliated against as my status as. And one of them is a whistleblower. One of them is like First Amendment rights, other statutes, different things that my attorneys had said I need to ask them for an internal investigation. And then you list all that. And then you go to, in the meantime of that investigation, I asked to be put on administrative leave. If you're not willing to do that, please contact my attorneys. And here's their contact information. And I skip over the middle there because I literally skipped over the middle. The middle was me saying and writing that I thought I was being discriminated against because of my race and gender. And it's not something that I had looked for, wanted to believe. I thought the guy was just a jerk. And my attorney is like, when I told them what was going on, they're like, this is so blatantly because of that.
Yeah.
And so even writing it down and naming it and allowing myself to see it. And I hate that they always accuse us of pulling a card and this and this. And it's like, you know how much things we ignore on a day-to-day basis? It's like, you know how much we ignore, you know how much we tolerate just to be able to keep going and make our ancestors proud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, the mental health support was needed.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. And one of the things I'll leave you with on this point, so that we can get through the rest of the interview without me sobbing. I'll sob later.
I'm here.
I heard a saying. I was in a professional development program, Urban Leadership Foundation. Dr. Ryan Ross here in Denver, he runs it. Brilliant man. One of the first things he taught us in that cohort, in that container, and I'm sure he got this brilliant quote elsewhere, it's something he had learned, is that therapy is the CEO's secret weapon. When your mind, you cannot succeed. We cannot be all that we are meant to be if our minds are not in the right place. And so let go of the shame around it. It's your secret weapon. Having a sharp mind and a way to be resilient and having those tools and having someone to hold you through that actually knows how to do it versus just our friends and family and this and that is extremely important. And it's the only way I'm able to right now launch 3 different businesses at the same time and expand into these different aspects of myself in a way that feels good and healthy for me, and still take at least 1 nap a day. That's also something that's important.
That team nap.
Right. Team nap.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Therapy is the CEO's secret weapon. Keep your mind together.
The stigma. It is so needed. It is so needed for so many of us. I'm a huge proponent and advocate of therapy for myself, for my kids. I remember when my dad passed, I told my mom, I was like, you should go to therapy. She's like, oh, I'm going to think about it. I was like, yeah, there's not really much to think about. Like, I really think it would help to talk to someone because you still have the rest of your life to live. And this is a hard transition, right? You don't have to do it alone. There are resources available. So I think the more we have these conversations and we're open about our experiences with therapy, I'm constantly saying your first therapist might not be the one for you, but that doesn't mean you give up on therapy, right? Because there's a need. So many of us experience trauma on various levels. So I commend you, I applaud you, and I appreciate your transparency about that, because it's a conversation we don't have enough. So thank you for that.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you for that. You mentioned something, right? Our ancestors and sort of, do we give up, right? They fought for certain things and certain rights. Talk to me a little bit more about that, because again, there are students who are fully aware that these obstacles exist, and they're sort of faced with that. Do I give up or do I keep pushing forward? Because our ancestors fought for this, right? Do I let the job go or do I keep pushing forward? Talk to me about like how you make that decision.
In this particular situation, because I went into being a prosecutor knowing what my values are and the purpose of me being there and how I was going to use my discretion, my platform, my title, my power. It was a no-brainer to me to use it to uphold the law. Even though I'd never met that defendant, she was a poor Latina woman, DV survivor, drug addict, all these things that maybe the rest of society would be like, why would you give up your career for this person? Well, because I became a prosecutor for that person. Because I'm the one who can see myself in them. Because I end up being a high school dropout and spiraling into the same situation she's in right now, and I see her. And it's the oath of office that I took. When our ancestors fought for us to be free, when they fought for whatever it was that they were fighting against, whether it's actually, participating in the Underground Railroad or doing it through the court systems, under existing laws and fighting, whether it was through their writing, their words, and getting a platform that way, abolitionists in that way. And then with Martin Luther King, and more recent with just getting, these rights to drink water at fountains and et cetera. They did that in the name of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm confronted with a situation where I can choose to be unjust and keep the position that, yes, they fought for me to be able to have,
Mm-hmm.
or I can do the right thing and risk losing that, I think they would choose the latter, because that's what they did. They fought for the right thing and risked losing their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't even have to face losing my life. It actually puts it more in perspective of, because of what they did now, my risk is of now I leave. Okay, look what ends up happening. I still have my law degrees. I still have who I am, my intelligence, my fortitude. I can recreate my life.
Mm-hmm.
It might be scary at first. It might be unstable. I might, not know how. I might need therapy, but I can rebuild this. If I do the wrong thing and I railroad this woman with nothing in the name of keeping a position that I only took on because I didn't like how it was being done before,
Mm-hmm.
not only would I be contradicting the reason why I was a prosecutor in the first place, but as I already stated, it goes against fighting injustice, which is actually what our ancestors were fighting for. And so don't worry about that. They'll still be proud, and they'll still swoop in and give you another option. Something else will open up, and you will never have to doubt yourself and what you stand for. The other thing that's beautiful about the world that they helped create for us, we mentioned, seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So they fought for us to have a seat at the table. Well, keep in mind, we live in a world now where we can build our own table. And so that's what I'm doing now. That's what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for traversing the corporate space, getting the keys to the office, learning that world, getting the skills which you need, understanding that, doing your best, but be prepared to, after that, take everything what you've learned and known and build your own table and sit at it.
Mm-hmm.
And have people come join you.
Mm-hmm.
You can push things forward in a way that these institutions are not doing right now. They're not doing right now. Not until we have enough tables of us coming together and strategizing on how to force that to happen. So
that's powerful. So what are you doing now, right? You've made it through this.
Yeah.
You mentioned, building 3 businesses, right? Talk to us about this light on the other side and this joy and this freedom that you're experiencing on the other side of the obstacles.
Yeah. So like I sort of started to say earlier, and we'll absolutely build on it for this without being redundant, creativity, being a creator and an artist I was groomed for that. I was classically trained in music, etc. So right before all this happened, I had started jumping into the music scene here, the open mic scene, and I wanted to join a band or create a band to do different types of music.
Mm-hmm.
And so when all this happened, a few weeks into that journey, I was so glad that music, I'd already started building those relationships and that outlet, because it saw me through this traumatic time.
Yeah.
Well, somehow I end up in studios where my cousins own a studio, and he has me put down some music. I end up, documenting this journey on YouTube, and different musicians reach out to me to collaborate on things. And I now have 2 singles that are out and 5 more ready to go.
I love it.
Right? So they're here. And now I've had to research, what do I do when I have songs out? And what is that? What is a music career? I didn't think. And so now I have to be a little more intentional. And I made my first little money on Spotify. My first single dropped in June, and I got my first little money from all the streamings around the world. And so And the Spotify streams are going up, and I'm not even promoting. Like, I don't know how people are finding my music.
I love this.
But they are. And so I'm like, I have to have a container to, like, to do this, because the music it's healing for me, but obviously other people are resonating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you find is when we are turning our pain into an outlet to artwork, it can also, that's how it becomes our prosperity, because someone else grabs it and they're like, this is exactly what I needed. So now I want to do that as an offering. And like I said, a way to even subsidize doing more accessible legal services. So that happened with the music. The writing, I've always been a writer. And so obviously I'm working on my professional memoir. The outline's almost done. I've been talking to literary agents and going to their courses on how to write a professional memoir. And through those courses, they give us access to the agents to do like Q&As and all these things. So I'm getting to know a few, saying who resonates with me. And I will be submitting that to have the professional memoir. And I say professional, not because it's like professionally written, but it's about my profession.
Yeah.
And what you and I just talked about with my experience with that. Maybe down the road, if it ever appears to be important to someone, I'll write a personal memoir. I don't know, but for now,
it is important to someone. It is. Okay. I'm telling you, it is.
Yeah.
Someone needs to hear the story of not just surviving the bullying, not just surviving the violence, but thriving, coming out on the other side and having a deeper story to share and being able to impact those who are still going through it and don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to stop.
And then I know. So, and then I do gardening. Gardening is something that I've always done since forever. And, since college and all this. And there are these 7 principles of gardening these different principles of life that I have applied to my life that have made me develop this resilience. They've kind of been mantras here and there. And it's things that I learned. I'll give 2 quick examples. One, like mantra number 1, do less. Plant a seed and have faith. Well, have faith is number 2. Do less. People think they need to like mess with their plants or do whatever with their plant. Trust that your plant knows how to grow.
Ooh.
Just
good.
like do less. Do less. And so how I translated that to life is, the way I dedicate my time, just like a plant, is very efficient. I'm dedicating my time to things that are either going to bring me growth, joy, or money. Other than that, I'm taking a nap.
Growth, joy, money.
There you go.
Nap.
Right.
I love it.
And so there's that. And then I think it's principle number 6 is know when to cut things off. So if you keep a diseased leaf or a dying part of a plant, and leaves age too, like they have their own lifespans. If you keep them attached to a plant, they start sucking nutrients because the plant keeps sending it there thinking it needs something. Yeah. And you're really just feeding disease. Do that in our lives. Be prepared to cut things out and cut people out even when the dynamic is no longer healthy. Family included, honestly. Family included. Sometimes the greatest lesson that our family teaches us is how to graciously release people who are not good for us anymore. With gratitude and love and over there, please.
That's a whole podcast episode. That is a whole entire, and I need that to be a chapter in the personal memoir, by the way.
Okay.
Yes. And I'll stop there because my family might listen.
Right?
Doubt it.
Indeed. And you don't want to hurt people. That's not the goal. The goal is to release in gratitude and grace. And sometimes, what I hope through me doing that may even model for them their right to let go of old toxicities, trauma, whatever, and situations that don't work for them, so that when and if we can reconcile, they've done some work. They've also released some things that were being projected on their relationship with me that I won't take. Not taking on right now, ever. Maybe it gives them permission to do the same.
I love that perspective.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love that. just gonna breathe for a second. We've talked about so much. This has been so amazing. And I'll just say this. Hopefully you're okay with me saying it. I know you were nervous. I will say this is a very safe space when we're talking, like, I want to get to know you, your journey, free from judgment, right? We all have a story. And I think the more we share our stories, the more impactful our lives are, the more we impact our communities and future generations. So again, I can't thank you enough for your transparency. Someone needed to hear every bit of this, every bit of it. Because someone is like in high school now, like, I can't do it, but I want to do this down the road, but I can't continue here. Right? Someone needs this more than one person. And I, again, think about people in my life who need this message. And so thank you so much for this. Wow. Recognizing we call this show The Key to the Office, right? And I know there's someone who wants to get into law. I want to be an attorney. What's one major key you could share with a student, high school, college, traditional, non-traditional student, one major key to their success, right? What do they need to be thinking about now? What do they need to do now? What are your thoughts there?
I would say if your profession that you're choosing requires a higher degree after undergrad to be certified in it, like how mine is like undergrad and then you have to do an additional school if you want to be a doctor or something like that. I would say while you're in college, have fun, find your balance, don't not go crazy. Definitely focus on grades.
Ooh.
Right? Because if you do that then, and you get into those higher level schools that kind of speak for themselves, like Washington University in St. Louis, whatever, and in particular for being an attorney, I know a lot of my classmates focused on academics in law school, and I didn't. What I did, I'm already there. That school speaks for itself. I then used that time to get a lot of internships and experiences that were going to teach me how to do the job and give me a list of people who would refer me and have work product to show for it. So that's what I would say if it requires that. If you're an undergrad and your chosen profession does not necessarily require another degree, do your internships then. Use your school's network to get you in front of the right people who can see your work ethic and hire you on, whether it's straight from undergrad or be references for you. And grades are important, but if you keep your head too focused on the books and not enough on building relationships, especially being people of color, where people, no matter what your grades are, apparently, and in my case, no matter that I'm like one of the most educated, and there's only one attorney who went to a better law school than me in that entire office, and she doesn't even work there anymore, they are still going to discredit my ability. So what you want to have is people who can vote for what you're capable of doing and teach you the ropes of what you're trying to do. So that's what I would say. And if you're non-traditional or you dropped out of high school and you don't have that yet, a lot of colleges do accept GEDs. But there are also, all cities have alternative high schools to go to. So I don't know kind of what to call it in different states or cities. In Columbus, it's called like, where I grew up in Ohio, it was called Life Skills Center at the time. Now it's called Columbus College Prep Center. So it doesn't say alternative high school in big letters, but Google knows how to now, search for things.
Yes.
And if they're, and if you want to have that high school diploma and that's important to you, look for an alternative high school in your area. They are absolutely prepared and expect to address whatever situation you're in. They already have an enrollment student body of people like you, whatever that means. And whoever's not finishing high school for the gamut of reasons that they don't. And so go there, you'll not only finish, but you'll do it in an environment that understands you and you don't feel alone or ostracized. And then yeah, go to college if that works for you, if that's what you want to do. FAFSA, the federal, I forget what it's called, but FAFSA, FAFSA, is where you go to apply for loans. If you are under a certain age, if you still live with your parents, they would go and put their incomes and apply for loans and different grants that the government offers. So just start there when it comes to looking at funding and recognizing how accessible these things are. And if there's a particular school that you want to go to, regardless if you think you have the grades or not, go visit that school and go and meet with the dean of the college that's in the topic that you want to study in. I got into every school that I applied to for law school. And I think it's because I drove around and I went to all of them and they all offered me full rides.
Wow.
Even though like my LSAT score was high, it was good, but some things weren't exactly where and I had done a master's degree in between, which they actually, oddly enough, kind of don't really, it's not weighted as much. Like they're kind of like, wow, you're doing that. Do you really want to be a lawyer type of thing? It actually makes them kind of second guess. But going there and explaining them and talking to the deans and them getting to know me and see who I am, I got into every school I applied to for law school, just showing my face.
Yeah.
So if you have that, just go, because this life is about relationships. And I know that sometimes we want to hide behind because we're like, everyone's going to look at us weird because we're a woman or we're of color or this and that. The other thing that you end up seeing is like, there's actually a lot of us out there doing things. I mean, some of the deans in those law schools I went to are Black.
Wow.
And I never would have even, like if I hadn't gone and seen them, and there is more diversity out here doing big things than what we know and what we're programmed to kind of think or believe. So show your face and see if it even feels good for you. You're also interviewing them. You're also seeing if it really is a school you'd want to go to. Build those relationships to get into the schools and the jobs that you want.
You've shared so much. You'll have to come back when your professional memoir is out because we'll have to talk about it.
Okay.
I mean that. So,
you know how to find me. I know how to find you.
Yes.
Wait.
Yes. How can we find you, support you, follow you, feed off of your energy? Is LinkedIn best, Instagram, website? You tell us.
That's the other part of the infrastructure I've been recently putting into place. I'm very excited to let you know that in the past couple weeks, I did finish, I had it professionally done. I had it professionally redone. My version wasn't so great, but it's the website for my law firm. And that will tell you what I'm doing there. I do have a Spotify artist page that I finally claimed and wrote a little bio in there.
I'm so happy.
I can share those two links with you.
Yep.
The website is easy. It's just rwrobinsonltd.legal.
Okay.
And then on Spotify, it's just my first name. It's just Rachel. The two songs that I have out right now are On the Edge is the second one that I just released. It's called On the Edge by Rachel. And the first one is Money Cars Closed by Rachel. They are rap songs. And the names are a bit deceptive, but it's like, it's gonna be a ride. So check it out. They're very intellectual, these are songs that I cried after, during, while they poured out of me. They were very spiritual experiences for me. I'm realizing all my writings, all my music is like that. So I'm hoping it resonates with people in a similar way. It's not explicit. I have some more rebellious songs coming down the line that do have some curse words. Okay. I'm grown.
You are?
Sometimes I'll be mad.
Let it out.
Let it out. but these songs are nice. And so very smooth to listen to, very easy to listen to. And I hope they resonate and empower people the way that the experience of creating them was. So it's Rachel, Money Cars Clothes, or On the Edge on Spotify. I can also, text you a tiny URL or something if you put it under your podcast.
I'll put it in the show notes.
And then rwrobinsonltd.legal for the website for my law practice. There you go.
Awesome. I hate to end this. Like, I feel like in my head, we have so much more to talk about. But I'll save some of that for another conversation.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate you sharing, because I know it's not always easy. I get it. So thank you.
I appreciate you holding this space for me and reflecting back to me that what I'm saying is going to mean something to someone. Because, girl, if it doesn't, and I went all through this for nothing, I'm going to go crazy. then no amount of therapy could help me.
Yes. You're on the path you need to be on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you.
If you're hearing this message, you have listened to the entire episode. And for that, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a review and check out our website at www.thekeystotheoffice.com. We look forward to connecting with you in a future episode. Until then, go be amazing.